Hey YouTube, welcome back to the final level. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about Halo Infinite. So I'd like to start this video with addressing the future of this channel. Ever since Halo got dropped, the team and I have decided that most of the content on this channel is going to be geared towards Halo and its esports. Now with that being said, the first thing you want to set up when you go into a Halo game, a brand new one, is you want to set up the settings. Okay everyone, so we're going to look at the settings menu and you're going to click on settings, and under the first tab on the controller, we're going to change a few things. First off, I play on bumper jumper. I highly recommend this layout for your buttons. It takes a bit to get used to, but it frees up your left and right thumb for aiming and movement, which is really key in this game. For your thumbstick layout, just keep that set to default. I recommend turning off vibration. It could be a bit jarring at first, but once you get used to it, I think it definitely improves your game. For hold to crouch, I have that checked for easier teabagging. For maintain sprint, I have that checked. I'm not sure if this is default, but definitely keep that checked. For auto clamber, turn this off, and step jump, turn this off as well. For sensitivity and acceleration, this is all going to come down to personal preference. I like my acceleration set at 3, that way I can look around a little bit quicker. But for my look sensitivity and vertical sensitivity, for me, this always changes. Some days I come in and I feel like a 4 is too high, I'll drop it down by 0.5 or up 0.5 if I feel like it's too low. If you're trying to figure out your settings, I recommend starting at 2.0, going into the academy, killing some bots, and then slowly bumping it up until you feel comfortable. Anything below a 2.0 is kind of ridiculous, so don't worry about that. For your zoom sensitivity, just keep that default to 1. I feel like it's a good sensitivity. If you feel like you want it up, turn it up. For your move thumbstick, we're going to talk about some center dead zones and some axial dead zones here. So if we go straight into the academy here, I'm going to show you what both look like at 0. As you can see right now, I'm barely touching the controller, and if I go to the right a little bit, it keeps going. This is what we call stick drift. Your stick is just locked in that position, and it registers on your controller that you are indeed moving. So to change this, I obviously don't want that. So we're gonna bump our center dead zone up a little bit, maybe two on each. Let's bump it up to 2 and see how it works. Okay, so there was a little bit of stick drift, but it cancels itself out at the end. And that's on the X and Y axis, so we'll bump that up a little bit. I feel like the center one's not bad. Okay, so for our look thumbstick, I have them both set to 0. Let's see what this looks like. I'm just going to pick up this gun. And you can kind of see there's a little bit of drift to the right if I slowly look. If I look down, there's a little bit of drift down, up. Yeah, so there's a little bit of drift going up, right, and down. So we're going to go ahead and change this. Center dead zone will put on 2, and this will put on 2 as well. See how that works out. Okay, try not to lock on auto aim. Okay, so this feels good. You can see if I slowly nudge it to the right, down, left, or right, there's not a lot of stick drift, so I feel like that's good. The important thing to keep in your mind when doing these dead zones is every controller is different and every player is different. This is something you're going to have to adjust to something you feel comfortable. These are my settings for my current controller. As it gets older, the controller itself, there's going to be more stick drift just from usage over time, so I may have to adjust these settings in the future. For keyboard and mouse, you kind of want the same settings, except move assisted steering. I really stink at driving on mouse and keyboard, and this can help you. And then your sensitivity is all personal preference. Same thing here, and your acceleration, all that jazz is all personal preference. And I don't play on mouse and keyboard, so I can't give any tips on this. So under video, under display, we're going to start off with our field of view. I keep this at 110. This is again personal preference. Whatever you feel comfortable playing at, go ahead and set that as your field of view. Display adapter, you want this set as your GPU. And for your display monitor, you want this as your main monitor. Borderless full screen checked. Resolution scale at 100%. Minimum frame rate off, maximum frame rate on 144. Now, if you're recording or streaming, I highly recommend that you have this set to your refresh rate for your monitor. If I have it unlocked, my CPU tends to overheat and get really hot and run at higher percentage values, so I definitely don't want that. So I keep it set at 144, and I feel like this is a happy medium. VSync, I have that checked off. Limit inactive frame rate. This is important if you're streaming and you tab out of your window a lot. Whenever you tab out, it limits the frames to 30 for the game, so it's not using as much as resources if you're trying to pull up stream or a YouTube video or something other than the actual game. So I highly recommend having that checked. All right, so coming on over to the graphics settings, we're gonna just run through this real quick. A couple key points before we start. If you're streaming or recording, I recommend you keep your VRAM usage to around half of your max VRAM. That way your computer, especially if you're on a single PC setup, that way your computer can use the rest of its resources to actually stream or record the game. Now this will take a little bit of testing on your side, but I recommend going into a custom game and just messing with the settings while shooting around, running around, and see what looks good to you. So just going into the graphics, for anti-aliasing, I keep this on high. Texture filtering, I keep this on high. Ambient occlusion, I keep this on high. Texture quality, I keep this on high. This is a big one for VRAM. If I turn this lower, you can see it cuts it almost in half nearly, but I keep it on high because I like the way the game looks at this level. For geometry quality, I keep this on high. Reflections, even when I have this off, I can still see pretty decent reflections, but having it on high looks really cool too, so that's personal preference. If I have it on ultra, it goes up by 0.03, but really reflections I don't need in the game. Depth of field, I have it on low. Shadow quality high. Lighting quality high. Volumetric fall quality off. Cloud quality, I have this on low. Dynamic wind on high. Ground cover quality on high. Effects quality on low. Decal quality on low. Animation quality on auto. For your terrain and your simulation quality, whatever you have one or the other set to, the other one does have to match. So if I set this to medium, this is going to have to go ahead and be set to medium. Just keep that in mind. For flocking quality, I have that off. So for async compute, you can set whether to execute compute work in parallel with your graphics work on GPUs that support it. I have no idea what that means. I just know when I have this enabled, I get more frames. So I keep that enabled. This might do better for you or worse for you. So just make sure you test around with that. For blur and screen shake, I keep these down to 0. Exposure and full screen effects, I have it turned down to 20%. Speed lines turned off, and I have sharpening bumped up to 15%. Okay, so for audio, this is all personal preference again. For the main, I keep that turned up because it's the volume for all audio. For voice, this is actually the voice of the AI. I have this turned down because he can get annoying in some games and hard to focus whenever he's talking. So I have that turned down just a bit. He can still provide useful information, so definitely keep it on. For music, I have the in-game music turned down to 2. Menu music is turned down to 0 just because whenever I'm streaming or recording, I'm usually playing some stream beats or something. That way they don't clash with each other. Sound effects turned up to 10. Environmental effects are sounds such as wildlife like birds, or there's like sirens in the background. Like I know there's a certain map that has sirens and it can be a little distracting, so I have this turned down to 2. Not all the way because sometimes I like to hear it, but definitely have it turned down just so it's not as distracting. For hit detection effects, I have that on 8. Inactive mute, this is personal preference again. Whenever I'm tabbed out of the window, I just have it the audio turned off because maybe I'm talking to chat or something, and it's just an easy way to eat the game for me. Dynamic mode for your hardware, and for all of this I have subtitles turned off. I feel like they can just be distracting. And then these are all your communications for talking to your teammates. I have it on toggle to talk. I feel like that's really useful. That way I could just mute when I'm talking to chat or something and not be annoying. Now under UI, there are a couple interesting settings you should definitely take into consideration. For tips and tutorials, I have that turned off just because I feel like I get a good grasp of the game. I don't really need tutorials anymore. For text to chat, some people turn this off, especially when they're streaming, because people can say some racy stuff in the chat. Well, I have my camera floating over the text to chat, so you'll never see it anyway. Okay, so scrolling on down, you can actually turn on an FPS counter and a network statistics, which could be super helpful to you if you're trying to troubleshoot some issues with your setup. You could turn those on in the UI menu. Outlines and colors. There's a lot of different debates, preferences here. Personally, I like playing on Pineapple and Aborigine. I'm not sure what that word says. I just have it set to yellow and purple, essentially. I feel like the yellow is a little bit brighter for me, easier to see, and then the purple just looks cool of having your teammate is purple. I show enemy names, friendly names, and fire team names. Have all these disabled. Now here we go, getting into weapon offsets. For melee and pistol, you can just keep these set to default. But when you get to rifle, turn down your vertical offset and your depth offset all the way to negative 100%, and the same thing for heavy. What this does is this actually frees up a lot of field of view advantage, so that way it's easier to see enemies on your screen. Under accessibility, there's nothing really much more to change here. except for the visibility of subtitles, which should already be turned off, and then these settings should match in your video settings. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you took some value from it or learned something new. If you would like to see something in the future, drop a comment down below. If you think I missed anything, definitely let me know in the comments as well. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules to watch today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.